Arjun Singh Sethi joins us. He is the author of American Hate, Survivors Speak Out. Arjun, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, first obvious question. What's the book about?
American Hate, Survivors Speak Out is a collection of testimonials of people targeted by hate under the Trump administration. There's no question that hate pre-existed Donald Trump and that hate will endure after Donald Trump. But it's also a fact that Donald Trump and this administration has emboldened hate across this country. And so I thought it was important to travel the country and meet with survivors in their homes, houses of worship, and community centers, and to really document this moment.
So I'm sure the MAGA guys watching, if they are watching, are going to say, hey, wait a minute, what do you mean hate? That's not fair. We're just making America great again. You guys just don't appreciate it.
Well, here's what community activists, community organizations, and survivors across this country say. They say that hate has spiked in every facet of American life, in the classroom, the university, the workplace, and public life. There have literally been thousands of incidents of hate in Donald Trump's America, where the aggressors specifically mention Trump's policies and Trump.
Okay, well, that would seem to be some evidence. But let's talk a little bit more about evidence, and then I want to get into the stories that are in your book. So have hate crimes risen since not just Donald Trump's presidency, but his ascent, or maybe descent when he first came down that escalator to announce his candidacy?
Sure. So let me answer the question in a couple of ways. The FBI tracks hate crime data every year. And if you look at the latest year for which they reported, 2016, the data shows a steady spike in hate crimes throughout the year, and then a huge spike right after the election. So even the FBI's data shows a spike in hate crimes. The other thing I want to make sure that all the listeners know is that even the FBI's data is incomplete, because the FBI data relies on voluntary reporting by law enforcement, not mandatory, which is why, according to the FBI, there were something like 6,000 hate crimes in 2016. But if you look at a survey like the National Crime Victimization Survey, there could be, I kid you not, as many as 250,000 hate crimes every year in America.
So Arjun, what would you consider a hate crime under that definition?
So that's a really good question. And in the book, I very intentionally try to capture hate in all its forms, which is why you will find stories of bullying, cyber trolling, assault, vandalism, and arson of houses of worship, and murder. So there is no question that communities are experiencing hate crimes and intensifying hate crimes in this country, but they're also experiencing everyday acts of hate as well.
I'm gonna ask it even though I shouldn't. Okay, so online, the right wing have a nickname for me, which I'm amused by, but I don't know, what others would think. They call me Fat Brown Buffalo, and I'm amused by that because it's true that I'm overweight. It's true that I'm brown, and Buffalo's kind of badass. But would you consider that an issue, a hate crime? I don't know. Look, everybody's different. I have really, really thick skin, so that's why I'm asking.
So I think it depends on you and what you feel and what you're comfortable with. Here's what I can tell you is that there are people across this country who are cyber trolled incessantly. So let me give you an example. Tanya Gersh is someone who's profiled in the book. She's a Jewish American realtor and wedding planner who between November 2016 and the summer of 2017 received more than 800 menacing emails, phone calls, text messages, tweets, and the like threatening her life, publishing her young child's social media information. White supremacists threatened to march on her home.
Why?
So I really think that we need to be guided by survivors and guided by the folks who are impacted.
So why did they do that to her in particular?
So her case is now the basis of a major lawsuit that's been filed by the Southern Poverty Law Center against the Daily Stormer, which is a white supremacist neo-Nazi outfit. I won't get into too much detail, but suffice to say, Tanya Gersh had a conversation with Sherry Spencer, that is Richard Spencer's mother, and encouraged her to sell a commercial building that she owned in Whitefish, Montana, and to donate the proceeds to a human rights organization. And what ended up happening was Sherry Spencer, for reasons that are unbeknownst to everyone, construed that as extortion, published an essay on Medium, and Andrew England and the Daily Stormer and white supremacists across this country used that blog post as a reason to target Tanya and her family.
Did you talk, was she one of the stories you talked to, or that's in your book?
Absolutely. I went to Whitefish, Montana, and I spent time with Tanya in Whitefish and with her lawyer from the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And how did she deal with that? Because that's pretty frightening. And she's Jewish in the middle of Montana with all this hate raining down on her. No disrespect to the good people of Montana, but it's not like she's in Brooklyn or Miami where there's a lot of people that come from her background. So it can feel isolating. And so did that make it worse? And overall, but even Montana or otherwise, Jesus, that has got to be a hell of a thing to deal with.
I encourage everyone to read the book for all the testimonials, and I will say that is a particularly powerful one. And she talks about how she came home one day and she saw her husband with all of their bags packed, saying, "We need to leave because we are being targeted, and white supremacists are threatening to march on her home." And when her husband mentioned the Daily Stormer, she didn't know what the Daily Stormer was. She had no idea why they were being trolled. But they stuck it out and they fought. They decided to bring a lawsuit against the Daily Stormer with the support of the Southern Poverty Law Center. She also talks about how the local community really stepped up for her. So she mentioned that there were local businesses who actually put stickers in their windows saying "Love lives here, not hate," to show solidarity with Tanya Gersh. And just so folks know how vengeful and abusive and cruel these white supremacists can be, what they ended up doing was they actually got on Yelp and wrote nasty reviews of those businesses who supported Tanya Gersh. It's actually laughable. Some of them mentioned how there were cockroaches at some of these restaurants, even though cockroaches aren't in Montana because of the climate.
Oh, well, that's two reasons I want to move to Montana now. Apparently they stick up for one another and there's no cockroaches. Okay, so, but look, and I know that there are hopeful strands in the book, and that certainly is hopeful. That's the America I know and love, when neighbors stand up for one another, no matter what their background. But let me go back to another disastrous story. That's Khalid Jabara in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What happened to him, and who did you talk to in relationship to him?
So the Jabaras fled Lebanon because of the civil war and made their home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they had a good life until a white supremacist moved next door. And he really menaced and terrorized them, calling them things like dirty Arabs, dirty Muslims, and ISIS. The neighbor then ran over Haifa Jabara, this is the mother of the family, in his car in late 2015. Haifa was hospitalized, sustained very serious injuries. The next door neighbor was arrested. Initially, he was not allowed to post bond, but because a new prosecutor was appointed to the case who didn't know the history of the case, he actually allowed for bond to be posted. And as a consequence, the next door neighbor who had previously terrorized the family, run over the mother, was allowed to return next door to the family he had terrorized. And then months later, he murdered Haifa Jabara's son, Khalid Jabara, on his front doorstep. And I actually met with Haifa, Victoria, and Rami Jabara in the family home just 10 feet away from where Khalid was killed. I'd also like to let everyone know that this past Sunday was actually the 2-year anniversary of the murder of Khalid Jabara in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Man, that is powerful. I mean, I'd ask you how they dealt with it, but there's no good way to deal with that. They haven't moved? They're still in the same place?
You know, they're still in the same place. And I will never forget Haifa Jabara telling me and saying, Arjun, I will never leave this home because this is where Khalid grew up. And I have memories of him being a little boy in this house. And where you're sitting right now is where Khalid used to type on his computer, and he will forever be here. But I will tell you, they are an extraordinarily brave family. When I visited, I attended the dedication ceremony of the Khalid Jabara Library, a new library in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Rami Jabara, who's now in Texas, is working to ensure that survivors of violent crime have protections in place so that they can't be targeted again in the way that their family was.
Yep.
Victoria Jabara is working with young people to ensure that they know the values of social justice, equity, and inclusion.
Powerful, powerful story. Arjun Singh Sethi, a community activist, civil rights lawyer, and law professor. The book is American Hate, Survivors Speak Out. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for all your great work.